Hello, and welcome to Clarivate's IP Forum. My name is Jeff Roy, and I'm president of IP Group at Clarivate. And thank you for joining us today. We have a number of interesting topics to explore across our two panels and are delighted to be joined by a group of IP leaders managing distinguished global innovations and brands. More than ever before, we see innovation as the key to driving business growth and competitive advantage, and intellectual property sits at the heart of this strategy. Its rapid growth is creating tremendous complexity with more data and IP assets to manage than ever before. Process tension and efficient decision-making have become a major challenge for the IP ecosystem. Today's forum, Using IP to Drive Strategic Advantage, is designed to better understand these impacts across industries, geographies, and market dynamics, and to provide insights from expert panelists living this each and every day. Our first panel, IP Strategy, Does One Size Fit All?, will be led by Vashi Kanasaharaja and is designed to explore what IP strategy means across different regions and industries. He'll also explore what factors influence these strategies while layering in the market dynamics that drive decision-making. Our second panel, hosted by Rob Davey, will take a look at the influencing factors in commercializing IP. This panel will explore how IP leaders and practitioners can drive business performance through strategic portfolio management, as well as delivering a thoughtful approach to protection, management, and enforcement across intellectual property. I'm excited to bring these important topics and conversations to life today. I will pass the mic to Vashi, who will introduce you to our first panelists. Thank you again for joining us today, and I'll see you at the end of the conference.
So, hello and welcome to the first panel in today's IP Forum, where we'll be discussing a very interesting topic on IP strategy and specifically on the various factors that influence the development of corporate IP practices. My name is Vashi Kanasaharaja. I'm a senior director within the strategy group of Clarivate based in London. So, why is this topic relevant? Well, one of the biggest changes in business over the past decade has been an increase in diversity of business environments, ranging from stable to unpredictable, fixed to highly malleable. To succeed, leaders need to match their approach to strategy to their business environment. In the world of IP strategy is often discussed generally in IP forums with a one-size-fits-all approach that doesn't include the industry's structural features in which the companies operate. For example, strategies that would work in the oil industry have practically no hope of working in less predictable and far less settled arena of internet software. If IP is to be aligned with the business, it needs to be developed with its internal and external business environment in mind, including its competitive dynamics, IP legislations, and so on. The slide that you're seeing on the screen highlights some of these internal and external features that influence the IP maturity of an organization, and we'll touch on some of these themes as we go through the discussion. But with all of this said, it also requires a process to be able to enable it to achieve the necessary focus that can be translated into aligned, measurable plans to communicate clearly to everyone. But enough theory from me to help us add some clarity to this topic and give you some real-world insights into how this could be put into practice. I'm very delighted to present three IP leaders from very diverse industries and geographies. First of all, we have Amy Su, Chief Patent and Technology Counsel for Alibaba, Uwe, Head of IP at Henkel, and Karl Reichenberger, Vice President of Intellectual Property for Johnson Controls. Thank you very much for joining us today. And as we get into the discussion, I'm hoping we can learn a little more about your role, your company, and the industry you serve. So let's jump right in and set some context. So let's start off with the concept of trends that are impacting innovation. So a question for everyone, and maybe Amy, we can start with you. What is the most pressing trend impacting the pace of innovation and IP in your space?
Thank you, Rochelle. I'm glad to be here and talk about the trend. Actually, our trend in our industry is, as maybe everyone is, dealing with it in different ways. But in our industry is more in the AI business, how AI affecting our business. And also in the, we are doing online, offline e-commerce. So how does that impact our daily life? And so the innovation driven behind that is to solve these issues that people are dealing with it every day. So it is interesting to see how those innovations needs to be protected or in different ways to protect those innovations.
Thank you, Amy. I think AI is an interesting one because it's crossing over multiple industries, but thank you for that, Amy. Carl.
Yeah, one of the most pressing trends impacting the buildings industry, which is where Johnson Controls plays, is sustainability, and building solutions, which we provide, needed to address climate change. We're also addressing the trend that was just mentioned of AI and digitization. We're interested in building safety now more than ever, including clean air and healthy buildings.
Interesting. Yeah. Uwe?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. So, I mean, what is a pressing trend for us is digitalization. I mean, this is not coming to your surprise. But you see, if you put it into a broader perspective, what it really means is that industries which used to operate standalone are now really forced to come together and to work together on new business models, integrated business models. And so for us, coming from a more chemical footprint, so to say, this is opening fields of technologies we, at the very beginning of that trend, were really, to be very honest with all of you, not that much familiar with. But we managed to catch up. And so the entire, let's say, technical footprint in our portfolio is far broader than it used to be ever before.
That makes sense, and it's interesting to hear the sort of disruption of digitization and AI across all of these very different industries. That's interesting. Uwe, maybe a question for you. You know, when we previously spoke, we had this great conversation around that strategy is often thought of as being somewhat of a vague concept. But what does an effective IP strategy mean to you and your organization, especially when we think about these disruptive trends?
Mm-hmm. You see, to start from a more broader general point of view, at the end it is about deliverables and expectations. So when we talk about deliverables, we talk about a coherent IP footprint in your portfolio. And expectations we need to meet is that this portfolio adds a competitive advantage to the business. This is where we are measured against all the time. And to make it more concrete, it is a kind of triangle we are in daily operation each and every day. And this triangle is, on one hand, risk assessments to be done on an IP on an IP basis for your IP portfolio. Then it is cost control. We are always under cost pressure, and we need to make sure that we match with the expectations to this extent. And then it is resource efficiency. You do not have unlimited resources. You do not have unlimited budgets. So it is always a kind of back and forth discussion with the businesses to make the best out of the resources. And then you see, on one hand, you need to have a good cost structure. On the other hand, it is about demand control, as we call it internally, because your internal clients do want, almost unlimited support, but you need to make sure that the resources you do have are invested in the most optimal way for the business. And that is a discussion which is happening day to day on each and every patent attorney level. And that is very important to understand this in order to work on your deliverables and to meet the expectations of the business at the end of the day. It's easier said than done, by the way.
I can imagine. And what you said about the demand is very interesting, because on one hand, you're creating awareness of IP across the organization. And on the other hand, you have to control the demand that comes in, and that's a very tough balance.
Yeah, it is not only that's a good point. It's not only awareness that needs to be worked on in order to really make sure that everybody also understands the potential of IP, but it is also compliance. That everybody knows that IP needs to stick to the rules.
Yeah.
And this is, so to say, the broader aspect of IP strategies. So we are talking about different elements of a holistic IP strategy, I would say.
Yeah.
So at Johnson Controls, we've been looking at those external factors as well as our customers' missions to help us inform our product and innovation strategy. And I like to align our IP strategy as much as possible with that innovation strategy. Ideally, my IP team can serve as innovation leaders in the company and be right on right in line with the product leaders, with the R&D leaders, with the product managers, with the sales personnel, even to understand how our customers' missions are changing, how our solution sets need to change to address those outcomes. And I think if we do a good job of that, we can file early, we can file strategically, and we don't have as many spikes to the point that was just raised. Demand management is important, and I think one of the best ways to smooth out the demand is by being right on top of it.
That's interesting. I like the point you mentioned there, Carl, around sort of that customer focus for developing an IP strategy. That's interesting. Amy, be good to
Yes. In our industry, I think the common word is change, and it's changed fast, really, really fast to meet the demands of the customers. And we are, like many other industries, customer number one is always, cultural. And then how does that affect, in the e-commerce business, there are many, many different perspectives called customers. For example, in an e-commerce platform, you have buyers and you have sellers. They are all customers, and you are serving on the platform. So so what's the customer? And then there's a lot of definition in our business that they need to often talk about. And our legal, particularly in the innovation side of legal, they need to make sure we align with our business strategies, like some of you have already talked about. And so with that, with changing very fast, innovation is very fast. And also the innovation itself will have different types of innovation. One could be a very basic, fundamental, disruptive kind of innovations. And then, disrupting in a ways to serve the business I'm talking about. And then the other is more, day in, day out, a customer needs. So all different types of innovations, how do you actually pick the ones that you want to protect? Or you say in traditional way of protecting is through patents and trademarks and the trade secrets. So how do you actually use these tools to help the business? I think that's the tricky part in our industry. And the top of it, of course, you have budget issue and sustainability issues. So I think, we can dive into a lot more, but let me just leave it for now for this.
No, that's interesting. Carl, you mentioned sustainability is an important topic at Johnson Controls, and I believe your CEO, George Oliver, was recently invited by the President Biden to speak at speak on climate. But let's unpack that a little bit. I mean, what impact does sustainability have on IP practices?
Let's see. I think that this goes back to the question that I answered earlier, in that if we're right in line with where our customers are heading on an IP team, if we're right in line with where our company's mission is, and sustainability has been one of our key missions for a long time. So our IP strategy really hasn't changed, and I'm fortunate that we did invest in not only products but also IP, as sustainability was becoming more important over the last 2 decades. We've got one of the leading HVAC product portfolios. We've got equipment like low global warming potential chillers, high performance heat pumps. We've got a digital system that can automate the optimization of the HVAC system running in a large stadium, commercial building. And the best way we can impact global sustainability is by making sure our customers' sustainability needs are met, and that they're reducing their energy. You mentioned our CEO. He's stated that 75% of our new product development in R&D is going to be focused on climate-related innovation to continue the development of those sustainability products and services. But our strategy really hasn't changed. Like I said, sustainability and climate control have been part of our mission for decades.
Interesting. That's good to know. Amy, just taking this concept of external versus internal, does the internal culture of an organization influence the IP practices and strategies you adopt?
Yes, I think, Alibaba, as some of you know, and has grown from a little baby, from 18 people, grow to, 250,000 or so employees. I think now we're considering ourselves as a young man, 21 years. And I think, going through that whole process, our internal cultural and, with the mission that we has not changed. Talking about a change, what the change is actually the industry, our customers' needs, and those are the changing. So our culture, internally, we have, talked about the value, the core value of how to serve this change, how to embrace those change. And then in terms of IP, we have to really look into what is the difference 20 years ago in business and 20 years later in business, where our customers are, what they need, and we serve that through innovations. So now a lot of those challenges that we face is in our industry. There are many open IP concepts, many open source concepts. So how does open source strategy match with our traditional? I'm coming from a traditional IP background, and how to serve this company in embracing those cultural. I think that was originally was fairly challenging, but everybody is being not only the board is challenged, they're challenging themselves too, because the world is changing. So I think as long as we align with the business strategy, and I think we're going to continue on these changes. And now, as far as another thing is talk about the risk management. Sometimes the risk is not coming through competitors, not coming through our upstream customers or downstream customers. The risk is actually come from regulators. How to balance your customers' needs with the regulations. We talked a lot about data securities, privacy issues. And in the past, it was gray area. And now it becomes a mainstream, legal issue. And how do you deal with that? And then, day in, day out, those innovations to solve these privacy issues. I think there was a very exciting time for us to meet those challenges. And again, internally, we drive the innovation, try to continue on the innovation. That's the key, as opposed to just doing IP for the sake of IP. So
I like that, IP for the sake of IP. Yep. Uwe, maybe the same question for you, sort of on the internal culture and internal processes.
Yeah, it's on one end, it's also related to sustainability. If you take into consideration that we are a company already pretty long time in business, So it is about continuity and also standing for certain values. In the company, we have certain leadership commitments, for example, that we act as entrepreneurs and that we collaborate as teams and that we also own our results. That, on a very general level, may sound not that much meaningful. But if I translate this into the IP environment we are in, that means we are owning the results. It starts with the invention disclosure, where we also then give a helping hand to the inventors in order to translate this into valuable IP later on. And we consider ourselves to be part of this innovation pipeline. And that is very important because it requires a deep understanding about our business models. And we are in the company, we are operating in totally different business models. On one end, we are acting on the fast-moving consumer goods industry level. On the other hand, we are in the B2B business industries with regard to our adhesive technologies business. Totally different worlds. And as a patent attorney, or also as a trademark attorney, you need to have a deep understanding about the business model behind in order to really come up with reliable IP advice. And therefore, acting as an entrepreneur may sound a little bit fluffy, but it has a very deep meaning in Henkel because that is what it is all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, interesting. Carl, same question for you as well.
Well, first, I have to agree with everything that my co-presenters just mentioned. So I'll try to add something to that. And we try to focus on establishing a positive culture of innovation so that those idea generation steps, those invention disclosure steps are a natural part of what our product managers and engineers go through. As one example, each year we hold an international tech challenge. It's essentially a amped up version of a science fair where our employees are encouraged to form teams and we judge them based on innovation and other parameters like how well they're anticipating or serving the customer's mission. We have each of the participants enter invention disclosures, and this gets them used to the process of injecting invention disclosures into the system. It also provides a great seed for our next steps in the innovation and product development process. Sometimes great ideas end up coming from one of these teams at the Tech Challenge. But that's just one example of something we can do as an IP team, as a leadership team, to try to foster that culture of innovation that results in all of the disclosures we've been talking about.
Moving on to our last question, I guess this is the big question that I'm sure our audience will be interested in hearing about. But this concept of IP in the boardroom, it's been discussed for well over 20 years. And for those of you who remember, since the time of the famous Rembrandts in the attic. But in today's business environment, what are the fundamental steps in integrating IP with business strategy? Amy, maybe if we start with you.
Yeah, in the boardroom, I think most of the board members, they're looking to primarily two issues. One is the risk to the business. How does IP help to manage or curtail the risk of the business, whether it's coming, like I said, again, from the regulators or from competitors, mainly from those two. And then the other thing is, how do we convert the investments that you put in to the business, whether it's through commercialization or to again preventive, or the assets can be used for certain business, whether it's different companies, merger acquisitions, or all kinds of deals. So they want to know whether it's budget issue, whether the money that you put in, how you're gonna serve the business, and then how you protect the risk of the business that they are facing. So in the boardroom, we often would face the challenge or present yourself to focus on those, and then you talk about our procedures and policies that support those efforts that you're doing with your team.
Got it. Uwe, same question for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe to build on what Amy said, it's on one hand it's driven by, of course, of special projects which come to the attention of the higher management level, but it is also an expectation that we run the IP operation in a very competitive way, in terms of processes, in terms of cost structure, and also in terms of technical output later on, and avoiding disruptions in the market based on IP conflicts, and so on and so on. And what I sense, what is an increasing development, is that you are challenged to show that your processes are really up to date. In particular these days, with regard to digitalization and all digital aspects, you may consider to make your process more efficient, faster, and maybe also more, let's say, cost optimized. And their expectation is very clear. Show us that we are ahead of the curve. What have you done so far? What is your next plan to do? And you see, one big topic in these days is, let's call it IP analytics. What to do with all the big data we are sitting on? How to make sure that you get your hands on the let's say on the most important set of data in the company, that you manage the interfaces in a very modern in a very modern way, and that you have a kind of data structuring process in place which will allow you to share even very complex IP portfolio questions with top management in a way that they can see this in real time. And that is one of the most challenging aspects at the moment. And by the way, one of the most exciting at the moment, because that is that requires a lot of creativity at our end in order to match the expectations.
Absolutely, and there's great potential with big data analytics, and especially big data being already being a boardroom topic. I think it sort of facilitates an effective communication.
Yeah.
Carl, good to hear your views.
Right, as it relates to bringing IP strategy into the boardroom, hopefully, as one of my co-presenters said, our IP team has been that internal entrepreneur and has been in lockstep with the product innovation group along the way. So our product strategy conversation has IP elements built into it, and we don't have to push in completely separate IP strategy discussion at the C-suite level. It's for this sub business. Let's talk about the product innovation strategy. Let's talk about how we're going to deliver new outcomes to our customers. And oh, by the way, here's the IP strategy that's followed from that product strategy or innovation strategy. So I think it's a win if one can integrate the two conversations and make sure that IP is right there in the room or virtually these days in lockstep with the product teams.
That makes sense. So it's IP being deeply integrated with product and innovation strategy. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. You know, I think we've sort of come to the end of this portion of the panel discussion. But what I'd like to do, we spoke a lot of great concepts about internal and external trends that influence IP strategy. We spoke a little bit about, IP strategy in the boardroom. What I'd like to ask is, if I was to ask you to leave one tip for the audience that you'd like them to take away with them, what would it be? So, Amy, maybe if we start with you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think in a boardroom or, if I have the opportunity to talk constantly, doesn't have to be official setting. In our industry, it's fairly loose settings. If you build a great relationship with the C-level, I think, you can make changes anytime. So you want to create that conversational communication with the C-level, the board or the boardroom, and in a daily if you can, or monthly or weekly or type of environment. And then also you want to make sure your proposed changes has data driven, or big data, you call them big data, but data driven, so you can influence or to make changes, and also listen to what they have to say. I think being a professional in many years, sometimes you try to, you always think that you're right, and that they are wrong. The business people, they have no sense of IP risk and this and that. I think sometimes IP is a business. So in their mind is, if there's no business, there won't be any innovation or IP. So you have to kind of switch your position, step into their shoes, thinking of where they're coming from. So I think have a good communication, or build a team with a good communication skills. That's very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Uwe?
Yeah, let me put it this way. I mean, there are 3 C's which are driving me or guiding me in a way. That is curiosity, commitment, and creativity. And what that means in different aspects is curiosity, what is possible? What is the next? And then commitment is what is needed. And then then creativity is how to make it happen, how to integrate it. And I mean, we are talking a lot about IP strategy, but we also talk about underlying processes. And there's a lot to do in order to run a stable set of processes to make IP strategy happen at the end of the day. And these 3 C's are driving elements in order to make sure that you at least strive to be ahead of the curve in the various different elements of the IP portfolio management in the broader sense. That sounds maybe a little bit fluffy, and we could talk about this for hours, I guess. And I could also then substantiate this a little bit more with different examples, but unfortunately we are running out of time here. But nevertheless, that is it's very important to stay curious.
Excellent. Yeah. Carl?
Well, it's amazing. I really couldn't agree more with the curious piece. It's actually on my screen as my talking note for this topic, for this question. I think hiring curious IP counsel is absolutely critical for a successful IP function. Leaders such as ourselves, we can't be in every meeting. We can't be everywhere in the company at once. Having an IP team that is able to be curious, ask questions, stay abreast of what customer pitches are coming up, stay abreast of what big vendor strategy discussions are coming up. Those things can lead to early reaction, proactivity, and help inform the IP strategy. But as long as that curiosity is there, then I'd take the output from that and steadfastly align it with your business vision for your company's place in the future of serving its customers. And I think that can serve as a bit of a smoothing function, as I described earlier. If that's the North Star, how we get there along the way is informed by that curiosity.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad, Carl, that you did say curiosity, because now we have a concluding remark that there's 4 C's that we leave with. With Amy's communication, we have curiosity, commitment, and creativity. On that note, I'd like to thank my fantastic panelists.
This is a keel. This is a keel's doctor, doing his best to break the news gently. And this is the goldfish that changed the keel's life. Because this is Ilsa, and Ilsa's having a eureka moment. this is how a moment of inspiration becomes an idea. With a little help from Clarivate. It starts with Web of Science, where Ilsa and researchers like her can access millions of research papers and track ideas in a click, helping her idea develop, grow, and spread across the research community. This is Ivy, head of R&D. She's intrigued by Ilsa's idea. It could become a possible treatment. Insights from Cortellis confirm the idea is sound and has a market, turning the idea into an innovation. A drug, to be exact, which needs to be protected. So the lawyer uses Derwent to conduct global patent research and secures a patent. Enter CompuMark and Mark Monitor, used to research a name, trademark and domain, turning the drug into a brand that will treat patients around the world. And this is Akil, the guy whose life had just changed. This is Claravate, accelerating innovation through the power of human ingenuity. And, just this once, the power of a goldfish. This is Akil. This is Akil's doctor, doing his best to break the news gently. And this is the goldfish that changed Akil's life. Because this is Ilsa, and Ilsa's having a eureka moment. This is how a moment of inspiration becomes an idea. With a little help from Clarivate. It starts with Web of Science, where Ilsa and researchers like her can access millions of research papers and track ideas in a click, helping her idea develop, grow, and spread across the research community. This is Ivy, head of R&D. She's intrigued by Ilsa's idea. It could become a possible treatment. Insights from Cortellis confirm the idea is sound and has a market, turning the idea into an innovation. A drug, to be exact, which needs to be protected. So the lawyer uses Derwent to conduct global patent research and secures a patent. Enter CompuMark and Mark Monitor, used to research a name, trademark and domain, turning the drug into a brand that will treat patients around the world. And this is Akil, the guy whose life had just changed. This is Claravate, accelerating innovation through the power of human ingenuity. And, just this once, the power of a goldfish.
Hello and welcome to the second panel in today's IP Forum, combining IP assets to drive innovation. Today we're hoping to have a fascinating discussion about how top-performing organizations use different IP types in complementary ways to advance innovation and bring new products to market successfully. So without further ado, I'd really like to introduce our wonderful expert panelists today. First of all, we have Sarah Sahans from AkzoNobel, based in the Netherlands. We have Daniel Lingua from Ferrero in Luxembourg, and we have John Mulgrew from Lenovo in the United States. So that's the brief introductions, but I would like each of the panelists, if you may, to give a bit of an introduction to yourself, the company that you work for, and the role that you play there. Sarah, if we could start with you.
Of course, thank you very much. My name is Sarah Sahans. I'm the Director for Intellectual Property at AkzoNobel. AkzoNobel is a global paints and coatings company selling paints ranging from decorative paints for your homes and garden, industrial coatings, for example, those for cans, food and beverage cans, wood, for example, IKEA furniture, marine coatings for yachts and ships, aerospace, vehicle coatings, you name it. I think we probably make it. And there is probably a chance that you're sitting on something or something is next to you that's coated with something from AkzoNobel. I manage a global team of IP professionals, IP counsels who handle patents, trademarks, designs. We also have paralegals and formality officers. We protect our innovation by all forms of IP, patents, trademarks, designs, for example. The team is based in Shanghai, in China, Arnhem in the Netherlands, Nashville in the US. I've been at AkzoNobel for about 10 years. I'm a UK and a European patent attorney. And before this role, I held a variety of roles at AkzoNobel. Senior IP counsel, for example, director IP for the Americas. And prior to that, I worked in private practice in the UK.
Thank you very much, Sarah. No, that's wonderful. Thank you. Daniel, if we could move to you.
Right. Thank you very much for inviting me to this interesting discussion on IPs. My name is Daniele Lingua, Daniel, to make it easier to pronounce. I'm the IP director for the Ferrero Confectionery Group. I've been with Ferrero for 20 years now. My life has been spent in fast-moving consumer goods companies. I was a long time with the Coca-Cola Company before joining Ferrero. Ferrero, as you may know, is popular especially among children because of a Kinder trademark chocolate snacks, chocolate spreads, breath mints. You may know that Tic Tac. You may or may not know that Tic Tac is a Ferrero brand, and so on. We have, we're growing consistently in the years. We are now at about 11 billion euro company. We have 22 plants. We operate in 170 countries, and so on and so forth. So it's quite an engaging group. And lately we've been very busy acquiring brands, confectionery brands from our company, especially in the US market. And I lead a team of IP professionals. Our main involvement is with trademarks, and I guess we'll be talking about this later. We are not a high-tech company, so patents come as a secondary means of protecting our brands. We're a marketing company, fast-moving consumer goods. So that's what we do. I have a central team of about 12 people, and then of course we have offices in most of our regions in the world, and we try to have an IP council in each one of them. And for the moment, that's about it.
Excellent, thank you, Daniel. And last but not least, John.
Hi there. Thank you for inviting me to this discussion. I'm really excited about it. My name is John Mulgrew. I'm the head of IP at Lenovo. Before Lenovo, I led the IP team at Uber. And before Uber, I worked at Microsoft for about 10 years. I've got a split of private practice experience with in-house experience. As I said, I'm really excited to talk today about the conversations that we're going to have. And I think for Lenovo, there's really two primary intellectual property that we rely on. The first being patents, and the second probably being trade secrets is their second most important. We do have a number of trademarks, but I would probably list them in that order. So it's good to meet you all. Looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Fantastic. If we look at our first slide here, and this is some data that we've pulled out of the Claravate systems, both CompuMark Sagis and Innovation, where we look at the different categorizations of industries. And it's pertinent to today's discussion because we've got three of you from quite different industries, and we can see how that pans out on the data that we have here. Perhaps unsurprising results in that food and beverages for trademarks is by far the largest category. Something I know Daniel has already alluded to. And on the patent side, we can see the two largest there, computers and instruments and chemicals. So certainly we've got the right people today to talk about the different IP types that are used in different ways. But we're also going to dig down into some of the other IP types as well. But first of all, if we can expand maybe on what some of you have already touched on, and what are the most important IP types that you work with in your practices today? And we'll go in reverse order. So John, if you can let us know your thoughts a little bit more on that, please.
Sure, happy to. So I think these graphics are very good. I'm just sort of reacting to them real time. I do think for Lenovo's industry, the computer PC market, phones, data center products, things like that, we do rely on patents primarily as our intellectual property protection. That would include both utility and designs and things like that, just the way the product looks and the way the product performs. But we do have some trademark protections that we also go after. So I would say for sure for us it's patents first. And as I said, I think I count trade secrets as a class of intellectual property, and we have quite a lot of that. There's a lot of things in there that we would that I would lean on if we needed to. So this looks accurate to me.
Good. That's good to know. Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we're not a high-tech company like Lenovo. By the way, I also have a little experience with IBM when I started my career as in-house counsel. But we are a fast-moving consumer good company. If you look at the aisles of a modern trade distributor or retailers, most probably you'll find about 10,000 products. So it's very important to distinguish your own product from the others. Our big problem is counterfeiting, copycats, and so on. So in a word, trademarks are our livelihood, and that's what we use to protect our brands. Of course, trademarks and to some extent industrial designs, but we make a lesser use of industrial designs, and maybe I'll tell you why later on. Patents, of course, we can use them because not only do we make products, we have manufacturing processes to protect, but also we deal directly with the raw materials. We have agricultural companies, so there is a lot of new technology being developed there to safeguard and protect. And of course, that goes with trade secrets. We tried not to. So many bright ideas may not reach the level of patentable innovation. So, of course, we try to retain them as trade secrets.
Thank you, Daniel. So, Sarah, how about AkzoNobel?
Well, AkzoNobel is probably somewhere in the middle, actually. No form of IP protection for AkzoNobel is better than others. The right form really depends on the paint and the coating product, why the customer buys the product over competitors' products. For example, this varies per product, per industry, and it also really depends on where you are in the supply chain. Let me explain. For example, if you consider our decorative paints, so the type of paint you put on your wall, Flexa, Sikkens, or Dulux paint, the customers are people like you and me, and the customers identify those products by their trade names, by the stylized logos on the cans. So, of course, in this case, the trademarks and the logos are critical to protect. Sometimes the customers identify our products by the shape, and of course, then we would be protecting the design. But then think about the coatings for cans, for the Coca-Cola cans, for example. Our customers are actually the can coater, and the can coater recognizes the product according to a number code, for example, not by the name. And actually, it's the technical innovation that needs to be protected, and that's going to be protected by patents and trade secrets. So it really depends on the products, it depends on the customers, it depends on where you are in the supply chain.
Okay, excellent. I'm sure we'll dig into a bit more of that as we go through the discussion. I guess as you deal with different IP types, you're dealing with different people within the innovation lifecycle, different people, different stakeholders in the companies that you work with. So who are the main stakeholders that your teams work with day to day? And Sarah, if I can ask you that first, please.
Innovation, just to think about innovation starts with understanding the customers, their needs, and then developing the products to suit those needs and bringing them to the market. So at AkzoNobel, there are multiple teams at AkzoNobel working from beginning to end of the innovation process. So we've got R&D, we have marketing, we have communications, we have manufacturing and sales, and the IP function is really involved the whole way through. Our IP councils are either specialists in patents or with trademarks, and they actually tag team to protect our stakeholders. The obvious stakeholders, because you wanted the most of the stakeholders, the main stakeholders, R&D. The Technical IP Council works very closely with R&D to understand the patent landscape and how to protect the technical innovation. Like I said, however, we've got a tag team where we have marketing IP councils or agreement IP councils working with the technical IP councils, making sure that we, for example, if we develop the product with third parties, that often happens, we own those IP rights. The main stakeholders probably marketing. So in that case, that's when our trademark councils, they work with marketing to make sure that any new brands that are launched are adequately protected, that we take action against counterfeit products, for example.
Excellent, that's great, thank you. John, how about at Lenovo?
So we have multiple business groups, and the people in the IP team are usually located with the business groups wherever they are around the globe. Lenovo is a global company. We are trying to use our strategy of a bottom-up strategy, where we actually try to figure out what the business needs an IP asset for, and then we measure that, and then we measure our success against that business success. So we would work with the marketing team, we work with R&D teams, we work with business leaders. We try to frame what success is and what is business success, full stop. How does IP fit into that? And then we plug in where we can. So, we are pretty much across the whole company, and we're distributed around the world to help support them.
Excellent. Obviously, a critical part of the innovation team. Daniel, how about for yourself?
Yeah, I would say that I would make a difference between the past and the present in our group. I mentioned that we went through an enormous growth brought about by M&As, quite an expanded M&As activities lately. If I were to look back when I first started with Ferrero, even before that. By the way, Ferrero is still a privately held company. It's a family company. The founder was very proud to say that he didn't follow what the market wanted. He tried to anticipate consumers' wishes and expectations. So the idea there has always been to make unique selling propositions, unique products that you wouldn't normally find it in the market, and consumer wouldn't know that they want them. So that was the Ferrero tradition. So our clients were, of course, the people who worked in labs, in kitchens. Mr. Ferrero himself would spend most of his time in what we used to call the chemistry room, which was his own personal lab, where he would try the raw materials, the sugars, the cocoa, and so on. It was very interesting. So it was really trying to satisfy the needs coming from all these sometimes crazy ideas that would eventually become products, and then of course we would touch base with our technical people to make sure we would find some adequate technical protection, and of course with our marketing teams, but they would come after the big ideas, the had come up with the product. Things have changed enormously now. Of course, the market has expanded, and now, of course, that was a bit of an elitarian approach to the market. Now we need to compete with large competitors in the market, so we cannot just offer our niche products, but we have to expand our offer, and things are a bit different. So we look to what we call our products presidents. It's a nice title for a person in the company. And so we have a president responsible for the spread creams, a president responsible for chocolate bars, and so on and so forth. They divide their responsibilities by product type, and they have their teams who work on developing new products, which are sometimes not as sensational as they used to be in the past, and so they would be our main clients at this time, I would say.
Okay, excellent. John, I wanted to just dig down into something that you said. You talked about IP being a critical part of the strategy and being part of forming that strategy. How do you find the best way to form that strategy? Is it top down or is bottoms up the way to go?
For us, it's bottom up. It used to be top down, and what we saw was that when we had a top down strategy, it may work for others, but for us, a top down strategy led to gaps in business group, meeting business group successes. So each part of Lenovo has its own priorities and its own set of goals to achieve each year. And with a top-down strategy, what we were finding was that sometimes there were some groups that were not getting we were expending energy helping to support the business from a top-down approach. It wasn't always aligned very well with what the business needed from us. So what we've been doing for the last year is meeting with each group, and that includes, for example, even HR. So we believe that innovation is really relevant to prospective employees. They want to see what their talents could lead to. So we really try to define what does each business group need from a portfolio, for example. Is it to recruit more people? Is it to be used in marketing? Is it to prevent other people from other companies from copying our innovations? What would we do with these assets, assuming that we had them? And so that's the approach we've been taking for the last year, is just meeting with each business group, really spending a lot of time to understand what they need to be successful, and then we figure out whether IP fits into that story or not. And when it does, we try to create measurable statistics or measurements against that, so that when we meet with them, we meet every quarter with the different business groups, and we can actually track our progress against those goals, and they can hopefully feel more energized that what we're doing is truly there to help them be successful. So that's the bottom-up strategy that we've been following for the last year.
That's great. If we could look at the next slide, please. What we have on this slide is some information that comes from some of the studies that we've carried out here at Clarivate, as well as some news from the World Trademark Review. And what we're trying to look at here is the fact that we're consistently finding that brand intellectual property is becoming more and more important. I think traditionally people have seen patents as the driver of innovation, and they certainly still are major driver of innovation. But increasingly trademarks seem to be coming up there, including this study which the World Trademark Review reported on back in March, which shows how trademarks can effectively measure innovation, and was really making that link between trademarks and innovation, which was a nice explainer of that. But then when we look at what our own surveys found, unfortunately, trademark infringement is going up. This was a survey of a few hundred IP professionals, and they found that 89% of those people had trademark infringement over the past year, and that was up from 85% the year before. But also that continued diversification of the types of IP that are being used in the industrial designs are becoming more and more important, as well as domain names as well. Daniel, you mentioned designs earlier and the fact that you use them alongside trademarks sometimes. But maybe if you could dig into when do you use designs in particular? When do they become particularly useful for Ferrero?
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, certainly there are a huge difference between trademarks and designs. First of all, the certainty of a right that is acquired through registration. As we all know, designs are not; they don't go through examinations. They are vulnerable to previous use, whereas trademarks can be, as we all know, renewed without time constraints, time limitations. We feel that for our products, in particular, and we look to products with a long life, designs would not provide the adequate protection. If we consider a product like Ferrero Rocher, it's a historical product in our company. If we had just protected with design, the brand would be finished now, because the design would have elapsed after 25 years in Europe. So we look to build strong trademarks, and of course trademarks can be very versatile. You have figurative trademarks, word logos trademarks, you have 3D trademarks, you have musical trademarks. Now, especially in Europe, with the relative recent trademark reform, there are multimedial trademarks. There is a whole array of new ways to protect the look and feel of our products that designs do not offer. When we usually make the distinction between our business and the fashion business. Fashion business provides for new collections of clothes every season and so on. They have a very, very limited time to protect, and then they don't need a long-lasting right, because the following year or 2 years later and so on, they will probably have new designs and so on and so forth. As I said, that makes a big difference vis-a-vis our products. They are there to last, and they are not going to change over time, or at least season over season. Another big difference, another reason why we prefer trademarks. Of course, they're also cheaper. It's true, and they, as I said, they don't require an absolute novelty. So many times in developing a new product, a new packaging and so on, there is a possible leakage to the public, to the external, to the suppliers, to the packaging suppliers and so on and so forth, which may make your design vulnerable. This doesn't happen with trademarks. So that's why we basically prefer trademarks. One positive point for design versus trademark is that the use, design doesn't require to be used, and trademarks, of course, they may lapse or may be challenged for no use after so many years, depending on the jurisdiction, and this could be quite a problem dealing with multinational products coming from multinational, and having to make sure that the products are adequately distributed in the countries in order not to lose the trademark registration we acquire.
Okay, excellent, thank you. The other stat on here was talking about domain names. So Daniel, either sticking with you, or if one of the other panelists would like to mention, are you finding, like we found here, that domain names are increasingly being seen as part of the IP portfolio?
Well, in the food industry, we were surprised when the ICANN started its first wave of .name registrations. This was 6 or 7 years ago. We were very surprised to be one of 4 or 5 food companies to register .ferrero, .kinder, .rocher, and so on. We thought we would help our marketing people, our company, make vast use of that, but we noticed that the .com or EU and so on, the declination keep being used more extensively than the .name registration. So that tells us that they are regarded more like channels of communication than the IP rights, really.
Okay, fair enough. Obviously, another round of dot brands soon available from ICANN, we think, but probably in 2023. But we'll see what happens there. Excellent. If we could go to the next slide, please. I think we did touch on trade secrets earlier, but just wanted to back that up with another survey result that we found here, which really did show that a lot of companies were considering trade secrets more important than more traditional unregistered IP rights, such as patents and trademarks. And I think, as we've already discussed, sometimes it depends on the situation as to what is really more important. So maybe we could dig down into that question, John, with you first. And when would you use a trade secret, and when would you use a patent to protect an innovation?
It's probably a combination of factors for us. I don't think there's it's not as easy to say that there's a bright line where you're in trademark territory, trade secret territory versus patent territory. For sure, we have manufacturing. We make computer products and devices. Consumer electronic devices. So when there is maybe a manufacturing advantage, for example, we may or may not file patent protection for that, because discovering that someone else is utilizing the same innovation as us is very difficult to do. So discoverability is one of the leading factors. I think also there may at times be advantages that are significant for a secret, but they may not, in the eyes of an examiner, be strong cases for having a patent, for example. So we would probably look at just the likelihood of patent coverage as another factor. But for us, I think it's primarily about that discoverability. And we're very budget driven. So I think the third factor would just simply be, can we afford to have all the patents that we would like to have? And the answer is no. And I think most people will answer that question and say, anyone working in-house paying for patents, it's an expensive venture. And so we work with a budget, and sometimes we have to draw a line somewhere, and we decide to keep something more as a secret simply because patent protection, it's just sort of prioritized lower than the patents that we've selected to file.
Yeah, absolutely. There always has to be a budget, doesn't there? Sarah, anything to add there?
Well, John, I think you covered most of what I was thinking of as well. But the upside also of keeping a trade secret, is that in theory, trade secrets last forever, provided you keep it secret. So there is an upside there. Think about Coca-Cola and their secret recipe. They haven't patented that, otherwise everyone would know what it was and would have their own Coca-Cola recipe out there. But yeah, it's budget driven as well. Does it make a business impact? If it doesn't make a business impact, then don't cover that aspect by patent. Keep it a trade secret.
Excellent. Daniel, Sarah just mentioned probably the most famous trade secret in food and beverages. How about for you at Ferrero? Do you use trade secrets much?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, and that's a tricky thing, because of course we need to declare the ingredients in our product, just like Coca-Cola. And by the way, I spent 15 years keeping secret in Coca-Cola when I was with them. But so of course the recipe or food products can be easily replicated. So what can be kept secret? So we ran this exercise a few years ago in our company, and we identified some specific processes the processing of fats, for example, in some products is what makes a difference between our products and the competition. And that's something we could not patent. There is nothing worth patenting in that, but certainly it makes a difference. Or the combination of some mix of some flavors in breath mints, for example. That's what makes a difference between Tic Tac product and another breath mint. So the few people who are familiar with those processing methods, of course, are the most sought after people in our technical groups. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that is all the time we have for the panel discussion part of today's program. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeff Roy, president of Clarivate's IP group. I'm excited to have the opportunity to speak to you today about how Claravate is working hard to help our customers unlock the full value of their intellectual property. As you all know, intellectual property has always been a critical part of any business's growth strategy. IP's importance has only increased in recent years with the rapid pace of technology advancement and even with the convergence of technologies due to IoT, or the Internet of Things. That is not going to change anytime soon. However, many organizations today are not fully realizing the value of their IP. Some of those reasons include things like the fragmented nature of the IP services industry, a lack of alignment between innovators within a company and the teams that are driving business strategy, the growing demand for faster innovation cycles, and things like security risks that are associated with cyber squatting. And lastly, the rapid growth of IP in certain markets has exponentially increased the complexity of not just innovating, but of branding activities and efforts to bring products to market safely. All of this is creating process inefficiencies that waste precious time and resources. Despite these challenges, more is being demanded of IP professionals and of IP in general than ever before. Our customers are telling us that IP is a strong lever to increase the value of their business, that it can be a big differentiator for them in the market. They tell us quite often that they need to identify new opportunities to innovate and bring products based on those new innovations to their customers faster than ever before. They need to spend more time on important decisions while protecting their IP assets. And this is becoming ever more complicated with the proliferation of data. Our law firm customers oftentimes tell us that they need data and technology that enables them to do their jobs better and faster than ever before so that they can spend more of their time advising and building relationships with their key customers. Last but not least, in this dynamic and highly competitive environment, everyone needs to do more with less in order to reduce their cost of doing business. At Clarivate, we recognize the need for new approaches that simplify workflows and help customers do what they do best, which is growing their businesses. We're helping our customers meet those challenges by unlocking the full potential of their intellectual property. We're doing this by removing friction in key business processes and helping customers make better decisions so they can accomplish three critical objectives. First, increasing the speed of innovation. Second, protecting and managing their IP assets as efficiently as possible. And lastly, reducing their total operating costs. We are helping customers discover promising innovation opportunities faster with increased analytics capabilities and targeted advisory support. This, in turn, helps customers more rapidly commercialize their IP and optimizes innovation processes to increase efficiency. We are helping customers protect their ideas and brands with robust IP rights, safeguarding those rights from infringement, and preventing painful and expensive lapses. Lastly, we help optimize IP processes, removing friction and administrative burdens in those processes. We are helping our customers optimize their IP processes across the entire innovation lifecycle, thereby improving the way customers forecast and manage costs associated with innovation and IP management. So how do we deliver on this across the whole innovation lifecycle? What makes Clarivate unique? Through a series of thoughtful and deliberate acquisitions, Clarivate has brought together a number of terrific companies with terrific teams to harness a range of capabilities and high-value data sets across a very fragmented market. This enables us to focus our attention on modern solutions that reduce friction and help IP professionals make better decisions, as well as connecting the whole IP ecosystem in such a way as to dramatically increase efficiency and reduce the total cost of doing business for our entire customer base. As a result, Clarivate has a unique combination of expertise, data, and technology that is unmatched in the marketplace, all to benefit our customer. Everything we've done has been done based on direct feedback from our customers and with all of our customers in mind. Powered by this unique combination created through those acquisitions, Clarivate is the only company that can offer comprehensive end-to-end solutions across the entire innovation lifecycle. We can help our customers make better decisions by leveraging our data, advisory services, patent and trademark intelligence software, and search and watch services. We help customers manage their IP more effectively and more efficiently with patent and trademark management software that is at the heart of their business processes. And we can help our customers to better navigate the IP lifecycle with market-leading services that include patent and trademark services such as renewals, EP validations, and a rich set of filing and prosecution and administration services, along with domain registration and management. We are entirely focused on improving our customers' lives. The market-leading mix of data, products, and services now at our disposal enables us to bring our customers a connected suite of services and packages that can be configured to suit their specific workflow challenges. Our customers are now able to enjoy new cloud-native capabilities, integrated data solutions, including advanced analytics that are based on our market-leading data, and truly innovative solutions that connect all industry participants in a collaborative environment, saving them huge amounts of time and money. Because of the unparalleled breadth of Clarivate, we can offer these market-leading data, service, and software solutions in a truly connected environment that help our customers to innovate faster, bring their products to market based on those innovations faster, and to lower the cost of doing business. Thanks for attending Clarivate's IP Forum.